What's going on, guys? Chuck here. The big thing in Hollywood these days is the shared cinematic universe. You know, world where several different films and characters will all intermix with each other um, and commingle, if you will. Obviously, the biggest example of that is the Disney Marvel Cinematic Universe, which was going on for still since 2008 or so quite a while. So a lot of other studios have tried that to various degrees. Most of them all failing. I actually think all of them have failed, really, except for uh, Marvel for whatever reason. Now, almost 30 years ago, without even trying, you had an independent filmmaker come along and create his own little cinematic universe without actually trying to do so. And of course, talking about Kevin Smith. We all know the story. Kevin Smith was, working at a convenience store, decided I want to make a movie. Maxed out his credit card, sold his comic book collection, filmed at nights at the convenience store he worked at, and created the film Clerks in 1994. Now, that's a really dumbed down, condensed version of the events, but you get the gist. It became a very popular film, a critical hit. Max picked it up, sold it, released it, and it was a big independent favorite. And it would put Kevin Smith on the map and allow him to create other films. And along the way, not intentionally at first, I believe, he ended up creating his own cinematic universe, which will be known as the Askewniverse, named after the View Askew production company that he used to release his films. And he would do so for a good 28 years as of this recording, starting with Clerks in 1994 and ending to date with Clerks 3 in 2022. It's a long time between sequels. For me, these films hold a special place in my heart. I can, when I look back at these films, especially the Clerks films, and I'll get into that later, they just really speak to me. They mean a lot. They touch me in a very special way. Like I said, with the original film, Clerks 1994, that just hit at the right time for me. Like I said, 94, I was 19 years old. And I probably didn't see Clerks I rented it. I didn't see it in the theater. I remember seeing the ads for it, but I never got to see it in the theater. So we rented it. It was probably like, 95 or so. So I was about 20. So again, I was right at the perfect age for this film. Elizabeth, my friend Elizabeth, who I've talked about before playing times, and my best friend Dave. We would take weekends, we go blockbuster at movies, eat pizza. The typical thing you do on weekends back in those days. And this is one of the ones we rented, and we fell in love with it instantly. I mean, it was just so funny, written so well, such memorable lines. The characters were great. I mean, Dante and Randall were just so relatable to us at that time. I mean, these are two guys, two best friends who would bicker at each other, but they had a good amount of affection for each other. But they were dealing with weird problems that you would deal with at 20, which was nothing major. Dealing with the girl that you love who's run out with somebody else. You have the girlfriend you love or you're with, but you still pawning over the girl you shouldn't be with, but she's just on the table, so you want her. Been there, done that. And you're arguing over mundane things like who built the Death Star and stuff like that. These are the things that Dave and I would do. I mean, my God, we spent some time in high school talking about this stuff, and he and I really related to Dante and Randall. It was like I related so much to Dante. He was a lot like Randall. We have very similar characteristics, and it's a conversation he and I would have to this day. We'll still bicker at each other, or whatever. But we have a tremendous amount of love and affection for one another as good friends. Like he's my best friend, and it's it comes across with Dante and Randall. We connected with that. So this movie just hit right at a good time and just so damn relatable. It was so much fun. So from that point on, we go through all the years for these movies, and they all mean something different. They touch you in different ways. They have different meanings. But I thought this was a good time to kind of go back and revisit. At least we go through my collection of these films, especially just recently. Dogma has been released in theaters, I think, for limited screenings with Kevin Smith. I think it was a 4K restoration, which is a big thing because, as many people know, Dogma has been, in limbo for many, many years, unattainable on physical media. Kevin Smith didn't have the rights to it; belonged to Harvey Weinstein, and Miramax had it locked up. And of course, Harvey Weinstein's problems; he couldn't get a hold of it. Apparently, that's been resolved now, or at least he hasn't. He's been putting it in theaters, and he's actually posted on like a Facebook. I mean, today he was showing reactions of a crowd, end credits of the film. So I'd imagine Dogma is finally going to get a new release here soon. But again, I thought I would take the time and go through my collection of the Askewniverse films and just, reminisce or what they mean to me, kind of talk about some of these editions, because most of these are all DVD. I haven't really upgraded any of them because they're all really good editions, but we'll go through that. And again, just give you my thoughts and what they mean to me. So let's start off with the original, the first, 1994's Clerks. So what I got here is, and I can't remember if I think I had a VHS tape of it when it came out. But the first DVD I bought was this 10th anniversary Miramax Collector's Edition of Clerks, and Clerks X, 10th anniversary. This is a great DVD set. I mean, this is a 4-disc set actually. So I love it, simple black and white. That's fine, but here's all your features and you got 3 discs and a CD-ROM. There you go. It tells you, the date of this thing. The movie that started it all in 2 versions, including the extended cut that you've never seen, which I don't know about that. People probably seen it by this point. So let's take a look at what's on disc 1, which is the theatrical version. You've got classic commentary circa 1995 featuring Kevin, Mose, Muse, Brian, and others, like Scott Mosier, I'm assuming, but Mose, he abbreviated it. You have an enhanced playback track, Clerks the Lost Scene, which is the scene at the funeral. It's actually an animated scene. For when they had Clerks, the animated series, they put the scene, but it's animated version, but using the voices of Brian O'Halloran and oh my God, the one who plays Randall. I'm drawing a blank on his name. But yeah, so it's funny. The flying car. I mean, that's just a deleted sequence. MTV spots with Jay and Silent Bob, theatrical trailer, music video, Clerks restoration intros, and the original Clerks auditions. Disc 2 is the Clerks, the first cut. All new audio and video commentary with Kevin, Brian, Jeff, Moss, and Muse. Disc 3, The Snowball Effect, the story of Clerks. So you have, was it Mayday, The Crumbling of a Documentary, 10th Anniversary Q&A, outtakes from The Snowball Effect, still photo gallery, original Kevin Smith journals, articles and reviews, Reels and Deals by Amy Taubin, Rush Week by Amy Taubin, the New York Times Review at a Convenience Store, Coolness to Go by Janet Maslin, the IFFM 94 Program Note by Kevin Smith, the 94 Sundance Film Festival Program Note by Robert Hawk, the Odd Couple Sundance 94 by John Pearson, Peter Broderick excerpt from the ABCs of No Budget Filmmaking, Peter Broderick excerpt from Learning from Low Budgets, and of course DVD-ROM. There's a lot of stuff on here, a lot of stuff. And, I don't know if I ever did the CD-ROM. I didn't really have a computer then. But pull this out, and you've got the front here, the original poster, which I say had this poster, and I'm not sure what happened to it. I think it got torn up in the move, or it used to be a time I didn't have frames for posters. They just hung up on the wall, and it was terrible. But here's the back with the chapter list, and this is a gateway fold out. So here's Dante, and see, I used to have, or when we have meetings at work, and we're going in the mornings, and get kind of teams meetings. A lot of times, some days I'll put in this gif of Dante just throwing his head down on the counter. That's how I feel. I'm not supposed to be here today. Quotes, and here you've got all the 3 discs. And actually, is a not a fourth disc. Was the CD-ROM is somewhere. That's interesting. Theatrical feature, disc to first cut, bonus features. Maybe the CD. You can put in that for the CD-ROM. I'm not sure. Huh. Interesting. And you've got a booklet here. Intro by Kevin Smith and just pictures and photos. That is interesting because let's see, or DVD-ROM. Okay, so DVD-ROM so it means one of these DVDs is only a 3 disc. But one of these DVDs you can pop in your player and it's gonna. I don't know which one it is. Maybe all 3 of them. Doesn't say. Again, I don't have a disk drive to DVD-ROM to test that feature out. I don't think I did then either. Not that it really mattered. I was never big on the DVD-ROM stuff. But anyway, so yes, this is a Clerks 10 or Clerks X 10th anniversary DVD set. I've never upgraded this. I'm pretty sure there's probably a Blu-ray of this. I don't know, but I really like this set. I don't know if it has those special features that this one does. So yeah, this is a beautiful set, and I'm glad I picked this one up. And a year later, in 1995, he would put out his second film, and this is the one I remember seeing commercials for, and I actually saw a teaser poster in our Lowe's theater at the time, which is no longer around. And all it was the Magic Eye poster with Jay and Silent Bob at the bottom. And it's like, oh, well, cool, it's those guys from Clerks. And I remember one of the big things I remember about the trailer for this was, for the first time in color, Jay and Silent Bob. And I think it was, oh gosh. I can't remember Percy Rodriguez, who did the trailer voice for that, which he did a lot of. This is Universal. Mallrats was a Universal film. That's the second film he did, Mallrats, and it was the big studio film, which Kevin Smith had a lot of issues and problems, and it's very hard to work with Universal. But Percy Rodriguez did a lot of those Universal trailers, and he did the trailer for this, and it's great to hear that deep voice, And for the first time in color, Jay and Silent Bob. So yeah, Mallrats, 1995. We didn't get to see this in the theater, but we did get to rent it, and we weren't sure what to expect. But we had a blast with it. Again, this is a film that spoke to me from the character that I could relate to, Brody, in a lot of ways. Not so much TS, but I some ways TS, but a lot of ways of Brody. And most because this was 1995. I had just started getting into comic collecting. The Superman had died the previous year, 94. That I'm a huge Superman fan, as I talked about before. And that event kind of got me into collecting comics. And it was like the gateway that Superman. From there, I just started collecting. I still have a huge comic book collection. I don't collect them anymore, but I still have a huge collection. And, the way Brody talked about comics and everything, I relate. Now, I collect DC comics. I didn't collect Marvel, so I don't know much about them. But, it was still cool. A lot of things he talked about, and it's great to see Stan Lee in here. But this is a fun movie. And again, the mall culture, which was still somewhat of a thing in 95, but it was going away. Obviously, the mall was at its peak in the mid to late 80s. So it was, we still have a mall here that's just not what they used to be. But again, other things I can relate to with Brody on this was, his love of the dirt mall, as they called it, which was something we used to do here. Is we went to the flea market. It's kind of the same thing, where I would go to this flea market and find those cheap VHS tapes and all these little booths, and or go to the comic conventions and get bootleg VHS tapes of things, before they all became bootleg DVDs. But so a lot of that was just, speaking my language, as it were. And it's a funny movie. There's a lot of silly stuff in here. The Jay and Silent Bob stuff is great. It was the first introduction to me to seeing Ben Affleck. I think he'd done stuff before this, but this is the first time I knew who he was. You've got Michael Rooker, Shannon Doherty in here, and of course Brian O'Halloran, not reprising her, but he's making cameo in here as a different character. But it's cool to see him from Clerks at that tie-in. and it's just silly fun. I don't think it did very well. People were expecting something a little bit different because this is more where I guess Clerks is kind of a cerebral comedy, if you will. There's a lot of thought into it. I don't know, but it's still dick and fart jokes, as they say. Well, this is more just plain slapsticky. And what Kevin Smith will always tell you is that the studio told him they wanted a smart Porky's. I mean, I'm not sure what a smart Porky's is, but I get I don't get what they want. And I don't think they really delivered that or not, but it's a fun film, and I really like it a lot. And we, again, this is another movie that's quotable, not as much as Clerks, but I think it's underrated from his other films. I think it's gotten its flowers, as it were, over time, but at the time it was kind of like the lesser of at one point, which was a trilogy of films before, Dogma and all that. But the first three films, it was like the kind of bastard stepchild. But it's found favor in its audience now, which I'm really glad. So I had the original Universal DVD of this, but I got rid of that to get this autographed DVD, his 10th anniversary edition. I purchased this directly from the Jay and Silent Bob Secret Stash. That's why I got the Kevin Smith autograph on this. And I said, here, this has the extended version also. See here, where is it? All new 10th anniversary extended edition featuring two versions of the film, the original theatrical version and an all new extended version. So you have cast interviews from the original set, a brief Q&A with Kevin Smith, outtakes, View Askew looks back at Mallrats, the erection of an epic, the making of Mallrats, featured commentary, music video, Mallrats the reunion, and more. So this is a nice 10th anniversary edition, and this has little clips or snaps. That's really weird. It's a pretty lackluster DVD, though. Not much on here. And a little flyer for other stuff. But that's it. However, a couple years ago, Arrow actually released Mallrats on Blu-ray. Now, I think actually, just like a year or so ago, they released a 4K version of this. I haven't picked it up. I just stuck with this. And this was this is probably like about, I want to say like 2021, somewhere around there. I know it was when I really first started picking up Arrow releases. This is probably like my second one. Prior to that, the first one I got was that Flash Gordon limited edition DVD or Blu-ray set, excuse me. And then it released this. So I got this of Mallrats. Wow, that's really cool. And this is a nice limited edition Blu-ray of Mallrats. Yeah, hell yeah. And this is the theatrical cut and extended cut also. And this is, all kinds of stuff on here. I don't want to go through all that. It's a lot. Plus, I can't read that small print right now. But here is the Arrow, which is the original I always love that poster because I love the comic book aspect of it. Inside, you've got an Arrow flyer with Mallrats and then other Arrow stuff. And here's really cool. You've got the Jay and Silent Bob blueprints. This is really cool. I like this a lot. Fly, fat ass, fly. Oops. And then, of course, you have your traditional, Arrow book. And that's the, poster that I talked about, the teaser poster that I originally saw. In the back, you've got Jay, Silent Bob, and Roxanne, which they told you, remember in the credits, I said, when they told where are they now kind of things of all the cast or the characters. And it's like, Jay, Silent Bob, and Roxanne, well, that's a story for a different time. And they never, where was that supposed to be? And I think it's not really mentioned until Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, or at least reference to. Now, this is a fun movie. And I'm glad, you got Stan the Man. And I'm really nice that it's got this kind of treatment. It's, kind of been reevaluated, or people look back and not so much as like the stepchild. There's your disc one, a theatrical version, and then your TV and extended cuts. So it's a really nice edition by Arrow. Like I said, I think they just re-released a 4K version of it. But Mallrats from Arrow, a lot of fun. In 1997, so years later, Kevin Smith would put out what would be his, at the time, and maybe still be, his most critically acclaimed film. The serious film, as they were. However, I think, unfortunately now, I think it's people's views on it have kind of twisted and changed, if you will, which is too bad. And of course, talking about Chasing Amy. This was the film where he said he had something to say. Of course, there was Joy Lord Adams, Ben Affleck, Jason Lee. And, the biggest problem people have with this now is the whole idea of, you have the Alyssa Jones character who is a lesbian falling in love with a straight man. They're trying to say, well, the straight man comes in and changes her and all that. And I don't see that as the issue. I don't think that wasn't the intention of the film at the time, nothing like that. It was basically two people trying to find love with different I don't know, levels of acceptance, I guess, or openness. Had the Alyssa character who was, it wasn't so much as she was that that Holden straightened her out, if you will. It was just that she was a person that she was comfortable with, she loved, and that was it. That's all she needed. She she wasn't just strictly I'm just women, just men. She's open to whoever, just trying to find that person that made her feel good. And that's what the story is. And of course, the problem is you have Holden who can't accept it. He's the problem in this movie. He has a hard time accepting that kind of openness of, it should just be one way or whatever. And it's a very tight subject to get into, but I don't think people look at it as like, well, it's the straight man comes in and fixes. I don't really look at it that way. I refuse to look at it that way. In 1997, that wasn't what Kim was trying to say. He's gone on record and said he kind of questions it now, and I get it. But again, we're talking. I think people looking at it now and putting too much into it, this perspective on it, as opposed to just watching it for what it was intended as, a love story, and a unique and unusual love story, plain and simple. And this, relationships are hard and they don't work out in ways, and you can't help who you fall in love with. I think that's kind of the big thing about it, in my opinion. Strictly, but I still think it's a good movie. Good characters, and it's definitely the most. Actually, it is the most serious film of all these. The most intended serious film, put it that way. Especially, Jay and Silent Bob only have a cameo on here, which is good because they would take away from that serious drama. It just basically come here, drop the sage advice, and leave, and basically set yourselves up for further adventures. And it's nice that throughout the series you'll catch up with Holden and Alyssa in the little bits here and there. I think Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and the Jay and Silent Bob reboot later on. So that's nice. So this was a Criterion Collection DVD. I don't believe they've ever released a Blu-ray. Some of these I'm not even sure are on Blu-ray or not. They may have been, but very, not very long. I'm not sure, but I haven't really seen much from if Chasing Amy was out there. Now I noticed it was a Criterion release. I know they haven't put another release out, like I said. And here's all the special features, which I haven't really gone through. That's a lot. I really don't want to read. Here's your booklet, which is the comic book that he wrote and drew. And I like this little map for Clerks, Mallrats, and Chasing Amy, all the characters, where they are, and how they interconnect at the time, which is a nice little touch. And this is, a nice little book. Now in their Blu-rays, they have big fold-outs, and this is kind of a nice, simple little booklet. And there's your DVD. But yeah, I had this poster too. I think about it, but this was a fun movie. I Again, there's a lot of things here that really speak to the heart, and I mean, I can't say I really connected with this one as much, but I thought it was sweet and it touched the heartstrings. And I know people who kind of been in the situation, so you know, I can I empathize, put it that way. So after that, and also should point out this is the first of his films we got to see in the theater to that point. Later on, I would get to see Clerks and Mallrats in the theater at one of our years doing like midnight screenings of both of them, so I did get to see those. So therefore, I was able to see the trilogy at the time in the theater. After that, in what is it, 1999 would come. What would be one of his most, if not most, controversial film for its discussion on the Catholic Church and religion, and blending obscene humor with God and Jesus Christ and angels and demons, and kind of taking the whole Catholicism and turning it on its head in a great, funny way. And of course, talking about Dogma. Now, as many know, we talked about it earlier, Dogma was a film that has disappeared on physical media, at least for now, because I got a feeling it's going to be coming back and in a big way. But for the longest time, it's been out of print and hard to find. I always talk about it's one of the most hard to find DVDs. Well, not for me. And I know most of the DVDs looking for are like these single disc DVDs. This is a 2-disc special edition DVD, which I've never seen since I got this. So it's like the only edition of Dogma I've ever owned is this one. And I don't know, how rare these are. I just know I've never seen too many out there in the wild. I never really looked on eBay or anything like that, but this is a great edition. I'm glad I picked this one, especially knowing that Dogma is, has not been available for so many years due to the whole Weinstein thing. But this is a great edition. And this is a great, great movie. It really, I say, it kind of turns the whole idea of the Catholic Church and the Catholicism on its head in an interesting way, and it makes you think. And I'm not going to get too much into the preaching thing. That's not my style, but I really like the concept in here, how people will follow a straight religion to a point where it's almost a detriment to themselves and others, where you can just not so much be for the religion, but just kind of have the idea, faith, if you will, and a belief in something, but be open to so many things. It's pretty deep for Kevin Smith, but it's good. And it's done in a fun way. You've got some great cast, in this film. And then great performance by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon as, the fallen angels. You got Salma Hayek, Chris Rock, Linda Fiorentino, George Carlin. Just, my God, it's just a fantastic cast. Of course, Alan Rickman, being the awesome Alan Rickman that he is, Metatron, delivering such... His deadpan delivery works so well in this movie, especially against Jay and Silent Bob as the prophets. And this is probably their most prominent film to this point, because they feature very heavily in the cast as opposed to having cameos. Up to this point, they would pop up a lot in Clerks and Mallrats, but they're kind of sporadic. But here they really focus heavily throughout the entire film. They are part of the main ensemble, which is really cool. So this special edition features on disc 1. Actually, you also have a new Dogma essay by Kevin Smith with interactive menus. That's pretty cool for the time. Along with scene selection with motion images. Fancy high-tech stuff here. So disc 1 is digitally mastered audio and anamorphic video, widescreen presentation. Audio is English 5.1 Dolby Digital with English, French, and Spanish 2-channel Dolby Surround. English, French, Spanish subtitles, cast and crew commentary. Second technical commentary with the director and crew. Bonus, follow the Buddy Christ for more hijinks with Kevin Smith, Ben Affleck, Jason Lee, Jay Muse, and the View Askew crew. Disc 2, we have the complete set of storyboards from 3 major scenes. 100 minutes of deleted scenes. That's really cool. With View Askew crew intros. Web link to the official View Askew site. Hilarious cast and crew outtakes, Jay and Silent Bob's secret stash spot, talent files, and theatrical trailers. So a lot of good stuff on here. On that 100 minutes of deleted scenes, pretty cool. So here's the case, and again, it's like a little book. And inside here, we've got looks like some kind of Sony thing to coupon or ad, I'm not sure. We have Jay and Silent Bob stuff you can purchase. Pretty neat. Then here's your booklet with the chapter list and the Buddy Christ. He's still very popular today, actually. And disc 1, the Askewniverse. Yeah, Askewniverse. And disc 2 with Hosties. That's hilarious. So, yeah, this is a really great 2-disc DVD edition of Dogma. And after that was what, at the time, I thought was the end of the Askewniverse, and that is 2001's Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Now, this was the film they talked about was kind of going to be the end, and this was the love letter to the fans, because this is where they brought all the characters that had been in these previous films. Not necessarily all the characters, but a lot of major characters would show up, and all the things would intertwine. And the whole premise of this kind of dates back to Chasing Amy, when Holden and Banky were writing the Blunt Man and Chronic comic book, which, of course, is a take on Batman and Robin featuring Jay and Silent Bob as Blunt Man and Chronic. Well, in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, you come to find out that they've sold the movie rights to Hollywood. They're going to make a movie of it. And Jay and Silent Bob figure, well, we're getting shafted. We need money, so we're going to go and stop this film. And along the way, you're running into characters from other films and hijinks ensue. This is like the most over-the-top, slapsticky of all the films. But again, it was intended as a love letter to the fans and a way of saying goodbye to the Askewniverse. I mean, even at the very end, you have God literally closing the book on the Askewniverse. So that tells you it is the end. But this was a fun film, again, for the cast you had in it. You had Ben Affleck coming back as Holden. You had Jason Lee coming back as both Brody and Banky. You know, Brody from Mallrats, Banky from Chasing Amy, and other characters who came back. Brian O'Halloran, and oh my God, I cannot believe I'm blanking on Randall's name. Give me a second here. It's killing me. I just Jeff Anderson. There it is. They come back as cameos as Dante and Randall. I think for the first time since Clerks, which was kind of cool to see them. But this is just, and you have Chris Rocket here again as a whole different character. But this is a lot of fun. Here you've got the bonus or 5 hours bonus materials. And it's the Lux Dimension Collector Series. You've got a feature commentary track with director Kevin Smith, producer Scott Mosier, and Jason Mewes. Deleted scenes with intros by Kevin Smith and guests. The Secret Stash with intros. Gag Reel with intro. Internet trailers with intro. TV spots. Still gallery. Storyboard. Behind the scenes featurette. Morris Day in the Time. Learning the moves. Music video. Afro Man. I Got High. I blame this movie for that damn song because that song was very popular at the time. I hated that song. I still hate it now. Music video. Stroke 9. Kick some ass. Comedy Central's Real Comedy, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Cast and crew filmographies, Guide to Morris Day in the Time, French language track, Spanish subtitles. You have DVD raw materials, and they're stuff for the DVD and the computer. Get extra stuff. This is also a lot of fun. Morris Day in Time featured in this, and that was great. Because much like Jay and Silent Bob, I grew up with Prince, Purple Rain, love Morris Day in Time. It was cool to see him here doing Jungle Love. It was great. We saw this in the theater, and what I remember about this was this played with a sneak preview of The Others, which came after this. So we sat down for Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, then immediately we stayed and watched The Others. which that was a great double feature. It's a weird double feature, but it was a fun double feature. Inside here, we just have a Jay and Silent Bob chapter list, and then the DVD. Open air side DVD. That's it. Pretty cut and dry. Excuse me. I hope you didn't catch that. But there it is. And again, that was the end of the Askewniverse. Until 5 years later, when, for whatever reason, to the point, this was like almost, let's see, 2006, so like 11 years after the fact, or 12 years after the fact, we come back with Clerks 2. And this kind of surprised me. I'm like, what? Why are we doing Clerks 2? What? I mean, it's cool. I'm glad. But what can we do? I mean, how is it going to match? These guys aren't the slackers they were in, 94. This is, 2006. What are we going to do? And this is the point when I realized that Jay and Silent, or excuse me, not Jay and Silent, Dante and Randall are the crux of this Askewniverse. Not Jay and Silent Bob. I mean, they're there. They're the R2 and 3PO of the whole thing. They're passed along. But to get into Kevin Smith's mindset, you have to, it's Dante and Randall that will give you Kevin Smith's mindset at the given time of this film. He's talking about, Clerks 1, and he was a young kid at Slacker doing this thing. That's where he was. Come 12 years later, whatever it was, you're dealing with Kevin Smith, who's probably like in his 30s, and you're Dante and Randall in their 30s. They're working at a meaningless job. They're starting to deal with real life stuff. Dealing with Dante's talking about getting married, and Randall's worrying about how life's going to move on, and he has to grow up without his friend. What's going to happen? All these different things. And again, being born when I was, being able to catch Clerks at the age I did, put me in the exact great mindset for Clerks 2. I was in my 30s around this time. This is what, like I said, 06. So I was, I'd have been somewhere north of 25, 30. 95, 2005. Yeah, I'd have been 31 years old. So I was right in that wheelhouse, if you will. And again, these movies are speaking to me. I got that sense of, kind of not quite midlife, but you're getting there, and you're wondering, what happens now? The fun, easy times are behind you, and you're just now realizing that you have to grow up at some point, and it sucks, but it really reflects in here. And I like this. It's got a lot of heart. It's sweet, and it's just great to catch up with Dante and Randall. It's always great to catch up with Dante and Randall. And everyone else. And it's a lot of fun. It's a great musical sequence in here, which you never thought you'd see in a Kevin Smith film. Again, it's one with a lot of heart. So yeah, this is the 2-disc widescreen edition, loaded with over 6 hours of bonus features. Rosario Dawson, front and center. She was a great addition to this cast, and along with the character who plays Elias. I can't remember his name. He was a fun addition as well. One thing that always irked me with this, though, was they were running a restaurant, a fast food restaurant, a Movies, which is like equivalent of McDonald's in the Askewniverse. Only 5 people were working the whole restaurant the whole day, open to close. That seems strange to me and improbable. Up until actually a few months back, I remember going to drive-thru at a Wendy's, and they, someone ordered and had me pull in a parking spot to wait to bring out, and it took forever. I was like, what is going on? I went in the restaurant. Hey, dude, what's going on with my order? I was supposed to get like 20 minutes ago. Come to find out, there were only 2 people working in the restaurant all day. And since the morning, it was probably like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They've been working there all day by themselves. So I guess it does happen. Of course, that Wendy shut down not long after that. But I thought maybe you need 3 more people and you could have this worked out. He did in Clerks 2. But it's also that same trope that bothers me in Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2. Whether at Haddonfield Memorial and it's at night, Halloween night, and the hospital is darkly lit, and only like 5 people are working in the whole hospital. BS. I've worked in a hospital all night. It is brightly lit. There are people everywhere. That always takes me out of the movie. Anyway, so Clerks 2, this DVD has on disc 1, you've got featured commentary with Kevin Smith, producer Scott Mosier, and director of photography David Klein, excuse me. Featured commentary with director Kevin Smith, producer Scott Mosier, and actors Jeff Anderson, Trevor Fairman, I think he's the one who plays Elias, and Jason Mewes, Brian O'Halloran, and Jennifer Schwalbach, who was Kevin Smith's wife, who I believe he met during Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And she would feature in his films going forward. A podcast commentary with director Kevin Smith, Scott Mosier, and actor Jeff Anderson. Deleted scenes prepared by Kevin Smith with intro. A closer look at interspecies erotica. If you know, you know. Okay, disc 2 is a Back to the Well, Clerks 2, a 90-minute documentary with intro, which is actually, I remember seeing it. It's really nice because it puts in the mindset of why Kevin decided to do Clerks 2 again. It goes back to this point in his life, and he just felt he had something else to say or to reflect on at this point in time, and that's why he did Clerks 2. Let's see. And then hilarious bloopers, 10 train wrecks, video production diaries with intro. So again, a lot of good stuff on here. Wow, this the little snaps. Open up. All you have is this little flyer ad for save $3 on something. It was a film with Jeff Anderson film and Trevor Furman called Now You Know. So, and presented by Kevin Smith. So, Hawken Films for His Friends. 2-disc DVD, disc 1, and disc 2. And that's it. Pretty simple. And so, obviously, that had to be it for the View Askewniverse. And then I found out, actually, just prior to recording this, I was taking notes on this. Apparently, there was an animated movie that I knew nothing about. And that surprised me. It was called, I don't have this because I just found out about it, like I said, prior to recording this. Jay and Silent Bob's Super Groovy Cartoon Movie came out in 2013. Evidently, this is a kind of spin-off or a companion piece to either to Chasing Amy and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Because if you might recall, in Chasing Amy, Holden and Banky are writing Blunt Man and Chronic the comic book, which, of course, I said earlier is a take on Batman and Robin with Jay and Silent Bob. This comic book, or this cartoon movie, was basically that comic book, I guess, put it in animated form or somewhere along that line. So I guess it was supposed to be released as a companion piece to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. But whatever reason, it didn't happen at the time. And I guess they were showing this online years later, and some of their maybe Kevin Smith's speaking tours. And apparently Amazon released it on demand DVD copies or for a while. And Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash sold it. So there you have it. It's like a Blunt Man and Chronic movie, more or less. I was not aware of that, so I don't have that. But speaking of things I was not aware of, the next one that came out was one I kind of heard about online and social media from Kevin Smith. This is actually not long after I think he had suffered his heart attack. That was a big turning point in his life as well. Kevin Smith was always a big guy. They always made a fat joke to Silent Bob because he was a big guy. But apparently, after one of his shows, he suffered a major heart attack, which he said was called a widowmaker because it's the fatality rate is very high with this kind of heart attack he had. But he survived it, and it kind of made him open his eyes and give him a new perspective on life, which I'd imagine it would have anybody. And he changed his lifestyle, became a vegan, lost a lot of weight, and then came back and did Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, which I didn't know was out there at the time. I mean, I remember seeing him talking about it, but I didn't hear much. It was kind of very low key. I don't even know if this got a theatrical release or anything like that. But the conceit of this film is that essentially it's a reboot of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, kinda. It's playing on that show because if you remember Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, the whole point of that was, well, Blunt Man Chronic's being made a movie. People are talking bad about us. We don't like. We need money. We're gonna go and stop the film being made. Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. Well, they're gonna make a reboot of Blunt Man and Chronic. Jay and Silent Bob aren't happy about that. They don't want that to happen. So they're gonna go to Hollywood and stop being made. So in essence, it's a reboot about stopping the reboot. So they're breaking all kinds of walls here. I've lost track, and it's very meta to the point where Kevin Smith plays himself, and as well as Silent Bob, and he also has Kevin Smith's daughter Harley Quinn Smith in a very prominent role in here as well. This is a weird one. I've only seen it the one time after I bought it. I haven't watched it again. I didn't need to go back and check it out. But again, it's weird because at this point, Jay and Silent Bob are old. Silent Bob is a slimmed down, trim guy. It's kind of weird, and Jay doesn't look like the young, goofy stoner that he was back in '94. But again, it's weird. The two guys that seem like they would never grow up, trying to grow up, it's strange. But again, you're getting references to the previous films. You're getting characters from previous films. It's interesting, and kind of goofy. Again, it's kind of like slapsticky, like the original Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. But again, it's fun to catch up with the character. So, but it was one that slipped on the radar. As like David told me about it. Hey, it's out there, and he's seen it. I hadn't seen it. And like I said, I'd heard about it or kind of heard hints of it, but I never knew it actually came out. So I was glad I found it and was able to grab it and pick it up. So that was the end of the Askewniverse, or so we thought. You see where this is going? Until 2022, when Kevin Smith came back with Clerks 3. And this was kind of a surprise. But again, and I say but again a lot. This is, again, it's a reflection on Kevin Smith's headspace at the time. Like I said, we talked about him having the heart attack, and all that's reflected in this movie. It's dealing with, Randall has a heart attack, and it kind of makes him rethink his life. Him and Dante, they're owners of Quick Stop. They're in their 50s. Dante's dealing with tragic life loss, and Randall's just trying to, he's had this waking moment because, I almost died. I'm going to leave a legacy. So he decides to make a film. So they're going to make a film based on their experiences working at the Quick Stop. So yeah, they're basically talking about the making of Clerks to the point where they're actually filming scenes that were filming in Clerks. It's very, dare I say that word again, meta in a lot of ways. But nostalgia too. Very nostalgic, very meta, very breaking the fourth wall. But there's a lot of heart here. And again, you're talking about a time of, where are we at? Or at this point, you're like 50. What's going on? You're like late 40s. What am I leaving behind in life? And now I'm dealing with mortality and, the crushing realities of what life holds. You're no longer a kid and carefree and worrying about stupid stuff like, who built the Death Star and who was, was better, Lord of the Rings or the Star Wars trilogy, yada, yada, yada. And again, this hit me at the right time, on the right age for it. I've talked about it before. I've hit 50. I'm questioning, what comes next, what mortality becomes a big factor in life when you hit that milestone. And they really focus on here. And it connected with me a lot harder than I thought it would. And again, you can really see where Kevin Smith's headspace was at a time when he wrote this. And I felt it as well. It really, like I said, it hit me really hard in a good way. And I think to date, this is the perfect ending for the Askewniverse, assuming that it is ending. There was talk of making a Mallrats 2. Everybody was coming together, we're going to do it. That's kind of seemed like it's fallen to the wayside. I know with Shannon Doherty passing away, I don't know if that's still a thing or not. And honestly, excuse me, if the microphone caught that, I apologize. I don't know if Mallrats needs a sequel. Malls aren't really the thing anymore. What could you do? And those characters were great, and some of them pop up here and there, but I don't really think they're warranted. We need to come back and revisit them, honestly, in my opinion. The characters you always want to revisit are Dante and Randall. And in this case, it's perfect that they started it and they finish it with Clerks 3. And I think that's how it should finish, because I think it's a perfect ending. It's just the way it feels like it should be at this point. Again, I'm just me, my opinion. I don't know what goes on, but that's why I think. So this is the Blu-ray for Clerks 3. It's very simple. Here's the back here. Special features, you got audio commentary with Kevin Smith, Brian O'Halloran, and Jeff Anderson, Trevor Fairman, and Austin Zaja. I'm not sure who that is. I'll have to look. The Clerks 3 documentary, which is really good. I think that's what they do, a lot of behind the scenes filming the whole thing from start to finish, which is really great to watch. We're not even supposed to be here today. 3 decades of Clerks documentary. Deleted and alternate scenes and a theatrical trailer. So a very simple Blu-ray, but got a lot of nice features on here. Recycle case. Clerks 3. Again, very simple. Not a lot of fanfare. But at least they got some real. I mean, the documentary here is really great. Both the 30 years of Clerks and then the whole behind his making of. That's a really good deep dive. And it's like feature length, actually. I remember watching and thinking it's not over. It keeps going basically from beginning to end of the whole behind the scenes. Really good. I had a thought there. It left me for a minute there. I don't remember where I was going with it. So yeah, that's really that's my history and going through all the View Askew movies, which View Askewniverse films. These films really meant a lot to me. I know the latter ones I haven't seen much of. I need to go back and check out. But those first couple, especially, really the first. I mean, I love them all, but those first 3 hold a really, really significant place in my heart, and all 3 Clerks films too. Because again, I feel like Clerks is a great bookend. Those characters mean a lot. I mean, those characters are basically speaking for Kevin Smith at any time, at any point of this whole thing. At any point in time, those 3 points in time, that they're speaking for Kevin Smith, and for people who are that perfect age, like I said, for Clerks when it came out, it's speaking to you too, because it did to me, and it's a lot of fun. Like I said, I can go back and watch Clerks and just kind of put myself back in the mindset of that 19, 20-year-old kid and just have fun laughing at the ridiculousness of it. The silly conversations, the mundane stuff you were worried about, the trivial things. I can go back and look at Clerks too and think, wow, in my 30s, where am I going? I'm going to, starting to settle down and, learn what it's like to be an adult. And then Clerks 3, you start working about mortality and what comes next, which I remember what I was thinking about a minute ago was Clerks 3, the end credits of that film, which is really something I've never seen before, is Kevin Smith actually talks over the closing credits of Clerks 3. And basically it's like, a thank you to the fans and what all this has meant to him and all this great stuff. And he has something he says in there that really struck a chord with me. And the saying is, don't be sad that it's over, be happy that it happened, or something along those lines. And it's a great way to look at it because, 30 years of these films, and, again, it's 30 years of my life is reflected in these films. I have 30 years of memories from these films, from his life, and it's like, it's the thing that's over tells you, oh my God, 30 years is a lot. What else is almost over? But don't dwell on that. Don't be sad that it's over. Be happy that it happened. You went through it. It's there. You had the memories of it. Relish in that. And I intend to. In fact, I think I'll go back and do a nice long rewatch of all these because it's been quite a while since I've taken a trip to New Jersey and checked out the View Askewniverse. I'm well overdue. So that is it for this long retrospective, if you will. If you enjoyed this, click thumbs up, share, subscribe, leave me a comment below. Let me know your favorite Kevin Smith film. Did you relate to any of the films as well as I did? Were you the perfect age for Clerks? That they resonate with you all the way through? Where you just discover it, some years back, and it's kind of going back. And if that's the case, if you're younger, does any of it seem like old fogey stuff, or can you relate in some way or another, or just say hi? I'll always take hi. So until next time, this is Chuck saying I will see you on the other side. Snoochie boochies.